Now we have a little flow sheet in front of you right now, which I hope will help clarify the argument for you. If you admit you exist, which we discussed in the first program, the question is, was there a beginning or was there no beginning? We've, I think, shown a considerable amount of evidence there was a beginning, and there's much else out there. All right, if we accept that, was the beginning caused or was it not caused? Now, there's an interesting perspective here, because when you start looking at the atheist proposition here, I think you run into a big problem. And that big problem is the question or the logic of looking at this question of something not being caused. And the important perspective here is to ask the question of where does it take you if you take the position that something can come from nothing. You see, I've heard atheists and skeptical writers say, well, how do you know that something can't just come from nothing by some process we know nothing about? That's the safest argument in the world. I mean, anytime you argue from ignorance, you're safe. And I don't say that in a denigrating way. If your argument is based upon something we don't know, then there is never an answer to the question. So it's a very safe argument. But I suggest to you that this particular question ends up discarding all of science if you take this position. Because if something can come from nothing, whether it's a weird new process or not, then there are major scientific problems. For example, if something can come from nothing, then the law of conservation of matter energy is wrong, which means everything in chemistry is wrong. I had a student one time who said, oh, now I understand why I have trouble with chemistry. No, that's not the reason. You end up discarding all known chemistry if the conservation laws don't work. If something can come from nothing, then the law of conservation of angular momentum is wrong, which means everything in physics is wrong. If something can come from nothing, then the law of conservation of electric charge is wrong, which means everything in electronics is wrong, which means your computer doesn't work. Now, your computer may not work, but that's not the reason. All scientific knowledge goes in a trash can if you take the position that something can come from nothing. And I would submit to you that that's a very unusual position for someone to take who is maintaining that, in fact, we can intelligently and logically discard the notion of God. We had a beginning, and the beginning was caused. And I think it's important to recognize that these statements are statements based upon logic and understanding and clarity. One last question, one that will take some time. Okay, if there was a beginning, and the beginning was caused, then what was the cause?